Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present on cyber bio in healthcare. So the first thing that I wanted to do was sort of set the stage and let you know why this is really so important to healthcare. So healthcare has become a lot more sophisticated, and the amount of technology has increased really exponentially over the past years. Healthcare technology has become much more sophisticated. The amount of medical devices has increased, as we will see, and the amount of data that we create, develop, maintain, and share in healthcare has also really exponentially increased. So, because of all this, healthcare has become a real target for hackers. So, become really important that we become very proactive in our security postures and do really everything we can to keep healthcare safe. And I think especially with biomedical devices. That's how we called them at Inchica with our work group. We use the term medical connected medical devices or biomedical devices. The reason why these are really so important is these devices are actually connected to a patient. So when we think about biomedical device security, we're really talking about a patient safety issue. If one of our medical devices were to become compromised in some way, potentially, that medical device could lead to patient harm or even kill a patient. So that's why medical device security is really super important, even more so than maybe monitoring phishing attacks or thinking about encrypting pieces of equipment or different things like that. So because this is a patient safety issue. So, and I wanted to just sort of start off by relaying a story for you guys to really kind of, again, let you know the importance of biomedical device security. So, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to sit in with a meeting with some healthcare CIOs or chief information officers. And one of the CIOs was sharing an experience with the group. So the hospital where this CIO worked had been a victim of ransomware. And because of that, all of the systems in the hospital were down. So every system, meaning the electronic health record, the phone systems, the servers, literally every system in the hospital was affected by this ransomware attack. So the CIO was telling us, what it was like to work in a hospital really in this day and age without any kind of technology. So, IT was working feverishly to, clean servers and restore the systems back to working order. Nurses were handwriting orders on paper and taking those around to the various departments of the hospital. The lab was resulting labs and then having to, manually, physically walk them to the hospital bed floors to give the providers lab results. So that's kind of what it was like. So you can only imagine how stressed the hospital was, how all employees were really maxed out in terms of doing everything they could to ensure patient care. Now, this CIO, he was a seasoned leader. He had been a CIO, a great CIO for decades. He was respected. He was really, a wonderful leader that people looked up to. And he was really relaying this story and talking about the emotional toll and the stress and what it was really like to be in this, with his team. And all the other CIOs in the meeting, they were all listening with rapt attention. Because we have sort of this principle in healthcare that it's not a matter of if your system is compromised or has a hack, it's really a matter of when. So you could really see all the other CIOs in this room, understanding that, everyone was vulnerable for ransomware and, attacks and things like this. So the CIO continued to talk about the situation and what it was like. And then he kind of almost stopped mid-sentence, and he just sort of got this look across his face, and you could sort of see his eyes tear up a little bit. And he just sort of took a second, and then he said, the whole time, the worst part, all I could think about was what if a patient is harmed because of this ransomware attack? What if, our systems are down and a patient is harmed or killed? I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear the thought that that might happen, under my watch. And you could see the other CIOs. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in that room because we all understood exactly what was at stake in terms of medical device security and security on a whole at the hospital. So this is very real. This is very real in a healthcare situation. And we all understand it could be, a matter of life and death. So let me talk a little bit about some learning objectives today and kind of some of the information that I want to give you all. So first, I want to help you understand the importance of cyber bio in a healthcare setting, what we're really talking about, and have you really relate to the importance of cyber bio. Then I want to talk about the prevalence of biomedical devices in healthcare and what that means to us. Then we're going to talk about challenges, some very specific challenges that happen in a healthcare environment, and then some solutions. What are people actually doing in the field today to mitigate some of these challenges? And then lastly, we will talk a little bit about career opportunities, just a little bit, because I know Todd's got some additional information to share. But as we kind of go forward and we get these new processes in place, there may be some new opportunities that you or your students or programs would like to know about. So let me just pause there for a second. I know we've got a small group today. Is there anything else that you would like me to specifically hit on this afternoon?
Hi, this is Steve Toms. Can you hear me?
Yes.
AdvaMed is a trade organization for the medical device industry. They must be aggressively active in this area. Are you tracking what they are doing in the sense of concerns?
Yes, absolutely. There's a big constituency of folks who are working on biomedical device security. Again, this is one of healthcare's biggest challenges. So I know there's a couple of different groups out there that are really pulling together to figure out kind of a multi systems approach, if you will, to dealing with some of these issues. Okay, well, let me go on and just lay a little groundwork for you. So if you're on the phone and you can't see my screen, I've got a little bit of a graphic here, but I'm going to talk about most of it, so you'll kind of get the gist of what we're talking about. So what has brought us to this point?
I can see your screen. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So what's brought us to this point in terms of technology and healthcare? So this slide starts off in the 90s, but we're going to kind of skip down to some 2000s. And really the internet then was really about the internet of content. So really what we were doing was we would have a lot of, it was used for email. We had a lot of email servers, static web pages. So it was really just the beginnings of the internet, really beginnings of moving data around, really from one place to another. In the later 2000s, mid 2000s, we really started focusing more on Internet of Services. So think things like e-commerce and e-banking. So now we're starting to move money around using the internet. Then we moved on to more of an internet of people. So think about when smartphones first got really popular and how now people could be more connected wherever they were through technology and things like, Facebook and LinkedIn and all things like that. Then here in the later 2000s, we're really thinking about the Internet of Things. So how can our things talk to themselves, right? So think about how, we use Bluetooth for one device to talk to another and how easy that is. So that's been sort of the progression. This slide ends in 2018, but the next bullet here would be the Internet of Medical Devices. So medical devices that are used in a hospital or a healthcare setting that are actually talking to one another. So as our technology has increased, We've also increased the prevalence of our connected medical devices. So back in 2019, Zingbox did a study, and they actually found that there are 10 to 15 million connected medical devices in our U.S. hospitals. On average, that would be about 10 to 15 devices per hospital bed. So I did the math for you here. So if you had a 500 bed hospital, which would be kind of a mid-size hospital, they're going to have 5,000 to 7,500 devices. So that's a lot. That's a lot of devices to keep up with and manage. Examples would be maybe a smart patient bed. So a bed that actually monitors if a patient has fallen out of bed. That's kind of a new thing that we have. It could be a vital sign monitoring machine that's connected to the electronic health record. It could be lab equipment, imaging equipment. I mean, the list is long in terms of our connected medical devices. The growth in medical devices, I mean, it's been double-digit growth in this particular industry for several years, and it will probably continue to grow. So when you think about a connected medical device, also think about the amount of patient data that is captured, stored, and shared. And actually, Lynchpin here did a study stating that in 2021, the amount of medical data obtained from these medical devices would double every 73 days. So just think about that. Think about all the medical data that's out there and think every 2 months, roughly, it doubles. So we've got quite an issue here. And actually what this is causing is an emerging cyber vulnerability. So we talked about the Internet of Medical Things on that previous slide. That is now the fastest growing breach type that we have. So we have created really a target-rich environment for healthcare. It's such a severe matter, actually, that in October of last year, October of 2020, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Health and Human Services issued this joint cybersecurity advisory, letting healthcare and public health sectors know that they are being specifically targeted for cyber activity, and really urging healthcare providers to take a look at their security posture, be more proactive, and really be on the watch for cyber activity. So why? Why is healthcare such an attractive place for hackers? So I wanted to tell you about hackers in healthcare and a love story. So why is it? Why does the FBI and Homeland Security and DHHS even have to issue these statements? It's financially driven. So the black market price for patient health information is about $250 per record. The next most valuable record type available on the black market is credit card data, and that's valued at a mere $5.40. So health information, $250 per record, credit card, $5.40. Why? Why is that? Why is health information so much more valuable? Well, if you think about a health record of some type, think about the number of patient or personally identifiable markers might be in that record. So you're definitely going to have a name, you're going to have a date of birth, you might have a social security number, you're probably going to have an insurance bit of information, and you can only imagine how valuable that is these days. You're going to have maybe some family relationships. You may have, other pieces of information. So the amount of usable information that could be sold is much higher than credit card data, which might have one or two markers. So that's the reason why hackers are specifically interested in healthcare data. And also just remember that the amount of data increases 100% every 73 days. So we are continuing to churn out this really super valuable, very attractive data for hackers. So again, we have created this target-rich environment. And unfortunately, healthcare is also an easy target, especially with our biomedical devices. So if you think about the kinds of medical devices that we have in our hospitals, think about the age of that equipment. Some of that equipment can be pretty old, but if it works clinically, the hospital may decide to, keep that piece of equipment, right? If it works clinically, it delivers what it's supposed to. Why would you replace it? However, it might have an old operating system. Maybe it's running Windows XP, which is now out of date. You can't patch it, and it's really kind of a gateway for hackers. Also, some of our industry standard practices, some of our medical device manufacturers use standard usernames and passwords like admin. Sometimes those are hard coded into the system. So again, it's a vulnerability that allows the bad guys to come in. So mostly what's happening is the hackers are using the medical devices with some of these vulnerabilities as a gateway to the hospital's larger network. So it's not like they're specifically targeting necessarily the medical device. It's more of a wide open window to the rest of the network. Studies have also shown that about 4 out of 10 medical devices are either networked or they could be networked. So again, it's a target-rich environment. Patch maintenance is also challenging when it comes to our biomedical devices. Again, age of the machine, the operating system. A lot of times IT doesn't even know that a new piece of medical equipment has been deployed within the hospital because that might be clinical engineering who actually deploys machines, and IT may not even know that that has been plugged into the network. So those are some of the reasons why we have kind of created this situation in healthcare. And if that weren't enough to make every single hospital do everything possible to prevent hacks through our medical devices, we also have HIPAA penalties. So as you know, healthcare is a very regulated environment, very regulated industry. If patient or protected health information is breached, there could be HIPAA penalties that are assessed. HIPAA penalties could be as much as 1.5 million per year, but even worse than that is the bad PR. So think about the healthcare industry news that's in front of us every day. A breach or a ransomware or a cyber attack, that is front page news. And so no hospital wants to be on the front page of industry news saying that they had some sort of cyber attack. There also could be corrective actions via the Office of Civil Rights, who sort of implements HIPAA penalties. And as you might imagine, those would be very resource intensive and time consuming. So again, more information, more reasons why we want to pay special attention to our medical devices. But as I mentioned, the real issue here is patient safety. Hacking a medical device could harm or kill a patient. So how does that work? So let me give you a couple of examples. So one example might be that a hacker comes in through a medical device, and really their motive is to just come in through this vulnerability to get to the network. But on their way, perhaps inadvertently, they actually change a setting on that piece of medical equipment. So now all of a sudden, an infusion pump, for example, is giving 10 times the dose of medication that a patient should have, causing the patient harm. And that's the most likely scenario. Most hackers are not pinpointing a certain medical device to do specific patient harm. Mostly they are, sort of trampling on settings as they come through. But it's potential that a hacker could target something specifically. So, but again, either way, it's a patient safety issue, and we really need to pay special attention and do all that we can to proactively secure these devices. So, what's the problem? I mean, I think I've laid some pretty good groundwork here for we need to secure these devices. So why don't we? Why are we not all over this in terms of security? So, well, there's a couple of things. And a couple of things that I heard in the meetings with hospital personnel, whether it was clinical engineering or it was the IT side of the house, that were really sort of issues that we need to address. The first one is hospital organization. So, a typical hospital setup might have clinical engineering sort of living under the COO, the Chief Operating Officer leg of the hospital org chart, or maybe it's under facilities. A lot of times it is not under IT at all, and it's probably not under security at all. So, because hospitals have these structures where those three core pieces, clinical engineering, IT, and security, may not be talking, that's part of the problem. So what happens is clinical engineering doing their jobs go out and implement, deploy a piece of equipment, but then IT has no idea that that's been attached to the network. So they don't know to go secure something that they don't know is there. So that's one issue, is just how hospitals have been organized in the past. Another issue for us is the cost to replace old equipment. So again, think about a piece of old medical equipment. Clinically, it works just fine. It does exactly the job that it's supposed to do, but maybe it's running Windows XP and it can't be patched anymore. It's a security vulnerability. However, that piece of equipment, it could cost $10,000 or $20,000. And some hospitals don't have extra money just to replace old equipment that happens to be working just fine. So now the hospital has a decision to make. Do we assess the risk, and are we okay with this vulnerability? Do we replace the equipment? Do we take money from another project and put it towards replacing via capital expense this piece of equipment? Or do we put into place some sort of workaround, like disconnecting it from the network? So now it's just a standalone piece of equipment. But these are the decisions that have to get made every day. And think about, again, if there are 10 to 15 pieces of medical equipment per each hospital bed that's there, think about the cost. Think about the magnitude of this issue. Another issue that we face is purchasing procedures. So how do we proactively stop vulnerabilities? So again, think about hospital structure. Purchasing department is probably not related to IT in any way whatsoever. So now we might have a purchasing department that's kind of out of the loop on what to look for when they are purchasing new medical equipment. They may not have information, which operating systems are current, or they may not know to be asking the vendors about patch management, or do you use common passwords. They may not have insight into those kinds of questions to be asking the vendors. And you also have to think about in a hospital environment, you may have some physicians, surgeons, or other medical professionals who basically, they kind of want what they want. So imagine an orthopedic surgeon telling the purchasing department, this is the piece of equipment that I want, and I want you to order it for me. I bring in lots of revenue into this hospital, so I kind of want the toys that I want. So that's where it really becomes upper management's job to champion security and help with the conversation between purchasing and providers to make sure that we are purchasing the best pieces of equipment that are the most secure. Another issue that we run into, asset management. So again, think about the thousands of assets, devices that we might have at the hospital. How do we even keep track of the inventory? So again, equipment is purchased, clinical engineering may be implementing that equipment. If a piece of equipment goes missing, say it's an infusion pump, say it's a vital signs machine that's on wheels. If that goes missing, if it walks out the back door, maybe we don't even know about that until the next inventory cycle, when someone is actually physically going around and doing a physical inventory and looking for an asset tag. So again, if that piece of equipment has patient data on it, that is a HIPAA breach of patient data. So we have to do a better job of asset management. And then lastly, patch management. If IT doesn't know it's there, they don't know to be thinking about patches and thinking about upgrades to the machine. So we have to figure out how do we do this? How do we do this better? Who's responsible for doing all this? Surely in healthcare, which is a highly regulated industry, surely someone is tasked with oversight of cybersecurity for medical devices. Is it the manufacturer? Is it their job to ensure that their devices and their operating system are up to date? Is it the FDA? Who has oversight and responsibility for this? Ponymon actually put out a study in 2017, sort of talking about security posture within the industry. This is a great report, and actually at the end of the presentation, I've got links and references to everything that we're talking about here, so you can go and read the whole report if you'd like. But I just pulled out 2 different figures from their report. So the first slide there, figure 1, says or asks, how likely is an attack on one of your medical devices over the next 12 months? And the device makers themselves said that it was very likely, or likely, 67% likely, that this would happen in the next 12 months. And hospital organizations, 56% of them said that an attack on a medical device was likely or very likely. So very high numbers of our manufacturers and healthcare organizations saying an attack it's probably going to happen. Now, contrast that over to figure 4. Does your organization take steps to prevent attacks on medical devices? 39% of our device makers in this survey said they are doing nothing. It's a 67% likelihood that something will happen, yet 39% of them are doing nothing to prevent it. What's more, 45% of healthcare delivery organizations are not doing anything to proactively protect against this. So again, this is a huge problem. So maybe the FDA, right? Maybe the FDA, who is responsible for approving medical devices, maybe they have a role to play in cybersecurity. So I pulled this fact sheet about the FDA's role in medical device cybersecurity, and I've highlighted a section there, which says the FDA does not conduct pre-market testing for medical products. Testing is the responsibility of the medical product manufacturer. Okay, so here we had in a study that 67% of device makers thought an attack was likely or very likely, but yet 39% of them are doing nothing. So whose responsibility is it? It is our responsibility. Securing medical device is a collaborative effort, and healthcare providers are leading the charge. So they're leading the charge in their own organizations. They're leading the charge in terms of collaborating with device manufacturers, with the FDA, with other stakeholders, and really saying, we have to get our arms around this. We have to do better because this is a patient safety issue. So here are some of the things that are being done to help us secure those medical devices. First of all, integrating clinical engineering into IT. So several of our hospitals here in North Carolina are starting to move towards that, really doing a better job of integrating clinical engineering into IT, which is new. I mean, for many, many years and decades, those two things were radically different. But now just understanding the technological nature of our medical devices, it's become really imperative that IT be involved and be part of the communication. Something else that's being done is incorporating security standards into the procurement process. So think about due diligence. And, as they say, the best defense is a good offense. So this is things like maybe we can do an assessment as part of the procurement process that assesses what operating system is this equipment using? What are their security protocols? What are the testing protocols? How serious is this manufacturer about security? So a whole list of assessment questions so we can sort of make sure that what gets purchased, we actually feel good about their security protocols. We're also doing things like deploying medical device asset tracking systems. So things like securing an RFID tag to medical equipment. So that ensures that, at all times we can know where those pieces of equipment are. And if one happens to go walking out the back door, we will know about that immediately. This also has a clinical benefit. If a nurse or medical provider is looking for a vital signs machine or an infusion pump, now there's a way to actually know exactly where all of those pieces of equipment are within the hospital. And then also deployment of medical device security platforms. So these are new. I would say over the past maybe 3 or 4 years, these platforms have become more prevalent out there. So this is basically a sniffer that you can attach to your network that will go and locate and find every medical device that's attached to your network. You can also store things like IP addresses, MAC addresses, other security characteristics that IT needs to know about, patches, upgrades, etc. Some of the security platforms also have built into them some analytics. So if a piece of medical equipment all of a sudden is generating a lot of network traffic, that will alert IT that something's up. Maybe that medical device has become compromised and we should go and take a look at it. So these are some of the solutions that are being put into place to really help us with this situation. A great example of a comprehensive program is Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic has been an absolute leader in medical device security for many years. This slide is from a presentation that they did a couple of years back. Oh, actually last year, 2020. And this is really talking about their end-to-end security protocol. And again, it starts with pre-purchase. It starts with that security criteria before making purchase decisions to be sure that, again, security is strong within the piece of equipment. Then we do things like working with vendors to address device weaknesses. So the Mayo Clinic is actually working with their vendors to test, to patch, to really, get a stronger sense of security built into that piece of equipment. It goes all the way through maintenance, always monitoring your vulnerabilities, and it concludes with decommission of the piece of equipment. So safely, decommissioning a piece of equipment and making sure that at all steps along the way, that security is at the forefront. So Mayo Clinic, like I said, has been a leader for years. They have a wealth of information on their website. They have information for their device manufacturers, sort of listing out their security criteria. And they also have a lot of information for their colleagues to just, share their protocol and procedures with other healthcare systems, again, for the good of everyone. So as we talk about this, you might imagine that new opportunities are cropping up career-wise. So some of the things that we're seeing are a demand for security analysts who actually know about medical devices. For many years, those bits of knowledge did not necessarily reside in one body. So, having people who understand medical devices, how they interact with patient care, but also understand security is going to be a growing field. And then a demand for people to run these processes within organizations. So you can imagine how important it is if you have sort of this end-to-end life cycle of biomedical device security. Someone needs to have oversight of that. And it's really helpful if that person has, again, that clinical engineering medical device background. So again, I think we'll have some growing career opportunities here. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of end with what we can do to support this effort. And I just sort of had a couple of thoughts here to leave with you, but to continue to learn about medical device security best practices, to continue to learn and follow industry news and see, what's happening and what's working, follow organizations like MAYO and others who are developing these security protocols and who are willing to share that information with others. Maybe including presentations like this, talking about the importance of this topic in your training curriculums, helping the next generation really understand the importance of security in healthcare. And then lastly, and perhaps, collaborating with your own local healthcare system on the knowledge needed by the next generation of the workforce. So again, sort of understanding the needs that a healthcare system is facing and integrating some of that information into your curriculums and, producing the next generation of workforce. So just a couple of things, last thoughts here for you. And as promised, I do have a list of all those sources that were used in the presentation in case you would like to kind of go and get more information to share with your groups.